Olá pessoal, boa tarde! Voltamos com o nosso segundo dia de cobertura oficial da NAFA ANI 2022. Dá até uma vontade de poder estar lá presencialmente, mas por questões de segurança, a nossa comitiva presencial para os Estados Unidos só retorna no ano que vem. Mas pode ficar tranquilo que a gente não vai demorar tudo isso não para a gente poder se encontrar de novo. Já anota aí na sua agenda que a gente tem um super encontro marcado, dias 8 e 9 de novembro. Teremos a 8ª Conferência Global Parar, o evento mais relevante de gestão de frotas do Brasil. A pré-inscrição já está disponível pelo QR Code aqui na tela ou no link no chat. Já salve aí para você não esquecer e aguarde que em breve teremos mais informações. E também no dia 11 de maio, sabe quem que está de volta? O Ahead Webcast, nosso encontro online, e o tema dessa vez é como driblar a inflação e garantir uma redução de gastos com combustível da frota utilizando o GoFleet. Link para inscrição aqui no QR Code ou no chat. Mais uma oportunidade para você se atualizar, poder trocar uma ideia com profissionais que vão te ajudar a melhorar o seu orçamento. Beleza, pessoal? Vamos dar uma olhada agora para o que espera a gente no primeiro painel de hoje? Você já conhece as empresas vencedoras e os profissionais do 100 Best Fleets Brasil, inclusive teremos um deles como comentarista aqui logo ao final da nossa cobertura, comentando os principais destaques do evento com a gente. E agora nós vamos conhecer também as práticas e os projetos dos ganhadores da premiação da América do Norte. Vamos ouvir de quem entende do assunto e conhecer as iniciativas que fizeram essas empresas merecerem a premiação, que vai acontecer inclusive aqui no Brasil também na 8ª Conferência Global Parar. Fiquem agora com Iniciativas e Ações da 100 Best Fleets 2022.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see you here. Hopefully we're going to bring you some great information about the 100 Best Fleets. Yesterday we celebrated the 2022 100 Best Fleets. And in today's session, we're going to bring 4 of the industry experts from those 100 Best Fleets up here to share their initiatives with you. They are subject matter experts in all of the areas that we're going to be touching on today. So I'd like to move forward with this. There we go. That's my slide. And I would like to introduce the panelists. Ron Worth, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento. Come on up, Ron. Tracy Rulo, Naperville, Illinois, Fleet Manager. He's got good stuff going on up there. Jonathan Ford, City of Orlando. City of Orlando is big down there. They've got some stuff moving on. And Jim Heinsohn, Port Authority in New York, New Jersey. Outstanding. Like I said, these folks are subject matter experts in the conversations we're going to have today, and they're going to share their initiatives and some of the things they're doing with you. So to move on into the program, as we do the research into the 100 best fleets, over the past few years, we've identified a tendency, and what it is the initiatives, and they basically fall into 5 categories. And everything these fleet managers do fall under one of these categories. But anyway, this is a slide shows you where the 100 best fleets come from in 2022. They're nationwide, they're all across the country, and we intend to get some of those gray areas filled in next year. We're going to do some outreach and those types of things. But I just like that slide. It just tells you where they're coming from. They're all across the globe. So let's talk about these 5 general initiatives. The 5 general initiatives: operational efficiency, that's number 1. It has been holding number 1 for the past 4 years. Succession planning, that's huge. Where do we get our people? How do we take care of them? Sustainability, the new word right now, EV, alternative fuels, those types of things. Life cycles. Life cycles last year was the number 5 initiative. It has moved up. There's a reason why. We're going to talk about that. And technology implementation. Those are the 5 initiatives that the 100 best fleets are taking to improve their fleets. So let's move into operational efficiency. Operational awareness is number 1. You're using that technology to have your finger on the pulse. You're watching your fleets, you're walking the floors. I just heard the conversation over here with the panelists. Every morning they walk the floor, they get the pulse of their organization. Policies and procedures. Many of the 100 best fleets in this category are working diligently on updating their policies and procedures. And there's many different ways they're taking to doing that. We're working on disposition programs. I always used to tell people, if you think it's hard to buy something when you work for a government, try to get rid of it. Oh my God, I used to have to go to the board to get rid of a little truck. I mean, and it's wrecked or wore out. It was horrendous. But they're working on those disposition programs. Facility capital improvement programs. That is huge. Those types of things are what they're really working on, and that is the biggest operational efficiency movement right now. And one of the things that you really have to look in when you look at that is when you have multi-facilities spread out across a large geographical area, how do you keep them all coordinated? How do you keep every facility running at the same operational level, at the same tempo? Ron out in Sacramento County has that going on. He's an industry expert on that, and he's going to tell us how he does that. Ron?
Well, the County of Sacramento, we actually have a lot of industry experts that work very hard, so it's not just me. I'm a small part of it. But every fleet is different. So with us and with every fleet, the first thing you need to do is identify the things you need to excel at and the things you have control over. And so that's what we did. We have a light fleet manager, a heavy fleet manager that each watch over their own shops. We have 9 total facilities, 9 fuel sites and some other small fuel sites. And so we had to really look at our data to get to where we needed to be to measure what we wanted to improve. So that took a lot of work with IT, administrative, getting our data right. We went through several rounds of cleaning up our data and then training, getting each person at each facility at every step of the way, from the tech to the supervisor, to make sure that the right job codes are entered, the right dates are entered, odometer readings. You can't fudge those because all those steps lead right up to what you're seeing here. This is a dashboard that shows in all facilities. We've got monitors that are shown to customers and the techs on the floor that show their data, their open work orders, their parts on order, by unit number, their PM currency for that location. And then all those get put together and averaged for our total PM currency. But this is an example of our Bradshaw light fleet shop. And so the idea is to each step of the way be honest with and timely and accurate with your data entry. Make sure your people are doing the right thing so you can feed these reports. And you're trying to build a trust culture, a culture of transparency where the customer comes in, they see just what you're doing, what the results are. And we've made a lot of strides. We've got a lot more work to do. But the other thing is, obviously there's a lot of resources that go into this FMIS system, use of Power BI, all kinds of reports that we've customized. But the theme is, it doesn't matter if you have those resources at your disposal. Figure out what works for your fleet. Every fleet is individual. Figure out what matters for your fleet, what successes you want to share with your customer. Figure out what data you need to share those successes with that customer, and get dialed in on that. It's different for every fleet. So once you do that, and you can share with your customers, when they come in, that training, all that accuracy, your customer is going to see that. You're going to see the people dialed in and the result when they get in the door. And they're not going to want to go look somewhere else because they know they're taken care of and that everybody there are professionals. I don't know how much more time I got.
Yep. Great. You know, when I read Ron's application this year, I got the sense that when they were coordinating all their facilities, they were using everything at their disposal to make sure they were moving forward at the same pace. And that's outstanding. When you talk about facility CIPs and facilities, you know, most of the facilities, governmental fleet facilities across the nation were built somewhere in the late 50s, 60s, maybe early 70s. And those facilities are outdated. They are not going to be capable of taking care of some of the things you're seeing out here on the floor during this I&E. So if you're a public fleet and you haven't started working on updating your facilities, that's a good place to start. One of the things when you talk about facilities also is the capital improvement planning. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to get moving on that. City of Fort Wayne, Indiana is moving forward with a 64,000 square foot new facility. And it took Larry 4 years to get that approval process going and get it moving, but he finally got it. You know, you've got to prioritize your requirements. You've got to get estimates, cost estimates. You know, you've got to get the approval process. Alex down in Miami-Dade County calls that the road show. He's got to go to finance. He's got to go to the mayor's office. He's got to go here. He's got to go there. He's got to get everybody on board before they can go do that. And that takes a lot of work. I know Greensville, South Carolina just opened a LEED Gold facility. So they're ready to go for alternative fuels and all that good stuff, and they're going to be very efficient long into the future. They've established that. But you know, when it comes up to facilities, and you have these facilities, you've already got them, how do you make the facility more functional? Tracy's got some ideas here that she implemented. She's going to tell us about it.
So we had a chassis come into our operation that was incompatible with our existing lift infrastructure. And our heavy equipment lead had the idea of bringing in portable lifts to alleviate that situation so that we wouldn't have to send that unit out for repairs and for maintenance. Once those lifts were in place, we then looked at the rest of our infrastructure. Each of our technicians is assigned an in-ground lift bay and a flat bay. And when their in-ground lift bay was occupied by a vehicle because we were waiting on parts or it was a longer repair, they were limited to what they could do in their flat bay. So we now have a total of 5 pairs of the portable lifts, and they are used daily. Our guys can do anything, and actually they prefer being under those portable lifts because they have a little bit better access to the underside of the vehicle.
Yeah, outstanding. You know, one of the other areas the portable lifts come in really well is in your tire shop. Boy, how many times you need to lift something up and get it off the ground for your tire shops, and I used to use those there too. It worked very well. Let's move on to the second initiative, succession planning. Where do we get them? Where do we find them? How do we keep them? That is very important, and it's only going to get more important as we move on. You know, there's the pool of technicians and the pool of fleet professionals is shrinking, and we need to, number one, take care of those that we have. Number two, we need to find out how to recruit them. We've got to give them a sense of ownership in the operations. Now, all these folks have outstanding training programs. Jim's got one of the best in the nation, and he's going to tell us about his training program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So the Port Authority in New York and New Jersey, we have 2,400 vehicles that are owned, operated, maintained by our staff. We also have a few hundred vehicles that are owned by us, but operated and maintained by outside sources. To add a little complexity to the diversity of our fleet, we also use 5 different types of fuels throughout the fleet. The reason I bring all this up is if you have all these different technologies and fuels utilized in your fleet, training has to be in the criteria for that. So on this slide, I kind of wanted to break it down into 4 different criterias. So we have different training for new employees, the current employees on the floor, for technology development and when the state regulations have to change, and also the advancement of some of our employees, bringing them through the ranks, and we'll talk about that in a second. So as you can see, on the top of the diagram, you're going to see orange. So that's all the training that we do for our supervising staff and for our mechanics. And there's a reason for it, and I'll go through it right now. So for all new employees, before they even hit the floor, one of the things we try to do is, one of the examples is getting their inspector's license. That's a part of the process. We do all the inspections throughout all of our shops. Since we're a bi-state agency, we have to cover New York and New Jersey. Another huge thing that we do right off the bat is cross-training. We get a lot of mechanics from different disciplines, whether it's coming from Toyota, BMW, Ford, or any big OEM. And we also get a lot of our staff from the heavy-duty side, whether they worked on garbage trucks, bucket trucks, or anything of that nature. We don't expect all of our employees to come in and know everything. I think that's a very ignorant thing to do. So we invest a lot in our resources, especially in our new employees. So if we have a light-duty mechanic, first thing we want to do is pair them up with a heavy-duty mechanic and start getting them to work on some of our specialized equipment. This helps in many different ways. But then we also reverse that process and get a lot of our heavy-duty mechanics and get them to work with our light-duty staff. It's very rare to see that you can see somebody jump and work on a garbage truck and then pop right into a light-duty vehicle and then be able to diagnose it and repair it. Those are two different things, diagnosing it and making the proper repairs. Another thing that we do is any junior staff, we'll always put them with senior staff as well, mainly because they know the lay of the land, they know some of the tricks, some of the equipment, utilizing the mobile lifts in the best scenarios, so you get a better shop feel. And also, we don't have a separation between our newer employees and the senior employees. So it also creates a great relationship that you can't put a metric on. For any of the supervision or management, you're going to see that in the blue. So any sort of certifications for new supervisors before they even hit the floor, like ERT or anything of that nature, we'll have that before they even hit the supervisor floor. Also things like leadership training. So before we even have a shop supervisor come into the shops, they have to go through a week course of supervisor training, learn rules, regulation, leadership skills, and I think that sets the pace for really running an operational shop. For current employees, we have a different method. So like I talked about, we have a lot of light-duty mechanics, heavy-duty mechanics, we have a big mix. So one of the things that we always do for our light-duty mechanics is we always point them out in a very good way, and we'll get things like hydraulic training and other things in the heavy-duty sector to really catch them up to speed and be proficient in what they're doing. Another thing is emissions. We can go through a lot of training with emissions, especially when it comes to regen systems, things of that nature. And when it comes to anytime we purchase an OEM, one of the things we do, you heard this a few times today, is we put it right into our boilerplate. So any purchase of a vehicle, you have to train our technician a certain amount of hours. And we'll get more into that in a second. Lunch and learns have been a very big thing that we've been doing recently. So what that is during lunchtime, we'll sit down on the computer, we'll have a Teams meeting, and me and Tracy talked a little bit about this. We'll have everyone present within the department. So we know with the office staff and the field staff, and everyone understands their jobs, their functions, and some of the issues that they're having, so that we can help support our staff, because we're all a team, we all want to move forward together. Standard operating procedures, how does that fit into training? So one of the things that we'll always do is we'll go through every function of a person's job so that we're able to put a new person in place and be seamless through the process, and we don't lose any information, because we're having a big issue with retirements right now. I'll try to speed it up.
Right.
So for technology development, I don't think there's anyone in this industry that'll argue that technology is not evolving at a very fast pace. You know, we're looking at anywhere from air conditioning systems. You'll see the 1234YF. You know, we started off with 134, and before that, It's just constantly progressing. We're having machines that are evolving, and that's a technology in itself that we have to do training on. ADAS, I haven't heard much about it in this conference, but I guarantee you in 2 to 3 years, that's going to be the next hot topic. Whoever thought that you would need to program a windshield to make it functional to move forward? You will start seeing that moving forward, so start watching out for it. You're seeing things like lane departure, things of that nature, but it's really going to start kicking up in the next few years. Anytime we get a battery electric vehicle, first thing we do is with the OEM. How can we work on this vehicle's safety measures? How do we diagnose it? But also, what tools do we need to move forward to get these technicians working safely? Which creates regulation and policy training. The last thing I just wanted to bring up is the advancement. So we have a few different things for advancement. First thing we have is continuing education. So if a mechanic would like to attend college, do any sort of supervisor classes, the Port Authority is willing to provide all those. One of the big thing on the management side is agency collaboration. Coming to these conferences, you're going to look around and see a lot of people on stage. But what I really suggest as well is looking to your left and looking to the right of you. If you're not introducing yourself to everyone here and using all these resources, you're not maximizing this conference. And I think just by going to these conferences, everybody's heading in the right direction with training. And I think those are some of the key factors moving forward. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, some of the key points that Jim just brought up is cross-training and mentoring. Those are huge. You have to have those programs going internally. You know, when it comes to training also, you have your internal training, and Jim touched on that a little bit. You know, Tracy has got an internal training development program in her organization with a step-up component, and she's going to tell us about that.
So years ago, about 6 years ago, we were struggling with employee retention. As a public agency, we found it very hard to compete with the private sector on a salary perspective. So an idea that came forward from one of our technicians actually was this Step Up Lead program. And what that looks like for us is it's actually written into our collective bargaining agreement. Yes, we are a union shop. And when a technician steps up into the lead position, they are paid at the starting base salary for our section lead position. They are fully responsible for everything involved with that position. They triage the workload. They're responsible for any HR issues that may arise in that time. They work with our fleet liaisons. They attend any meetings, and they're also responsible for moving forward with vehicle specifications when we're in our replacement planning stages. What that's done for them is given them maybe a little bit of an appreciation for the person that's in the shop office, hopefully. It's also given them an idea as to whether or not that's something that appeals to them moving forward. It's not for everybody. And for us, it gives us the opportunity to evaluate them in that role should an opening arise. And that became very important to us back in December of 2020 when our automotive lead retired. We did not have to post our position externally. We filled it internally. We had a few candidates that applied for the position, and we knew that the person we offered the position to was the right person because they had been in that position before.
Awesome, outstanding. Internal programs. You know, that's so important. And this has been going on for years. It's nothing new. And I know that the County of Sacramento has had a municipal fleet academy for years. Now it's had a little delay because of the COVID stuff, but they're getting ready to crank that back up, and Ron's going to tell us about that.
Yeah, so, you know, it's harder and harder to recruit qualified technicians, whether you're talking light or heavy. And we realized some years ago that this was coming. We had a lot of retirements looming. And we've always collaborated with our local Clean Cities, the Air District. Well, it sounds like, well, what's Clean Cities and the Air District got to do with recruiting? Well, they're in tune to the trade schools and the colleges to train these new technicians. And so we saw an opportunity to partner with, first it was American River College. We had 2 events there. And these events draw even high school students, college students, local city, municipal fleets, other county fleets. So the whole theme is get the word out, collaborate. A lot of these high school students and trade school students don't think of, going to a municipal type situation. They're thinking about dealerships, body shops, and all that. So it's a way to get the word out that there's a future there, and it's not just about technicians, but a career development path that can take them anywhere they want to go. So it's very important to get the word out there. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but collaboration and just getting the word out, basically. And don't be in competition with your local, the other fleets in your area, because they're in the same boat you are. And so that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's in the same boat, and we're all doing that. And Jim touched on it a little bit, coming to conferences like this, the certification programs. City of Orlando is moving out. That is huge. Jonathan's got his hands full down there, and he has figured out a training program for certified supervisors, including the CAFM and all that. He's going to tell us about that.
Yeah, so thanks, Mike. Just like you just talked about, we all think that we're in this alone, but just standing up here on this panel, we all realize hey, you're not in it alone. So the challenge here was trying to find a mechanism to get those seasoned employees from being so stagnant. And the way that I did that, I was kind of pushing tuition assistants home, just kept nailing it in, because you have employees that have been there 25, 30 years that they're just comfortable where they want to be. How do you get those technicians and those supervisors to become that employee of the month, within the next year or so? So we developed this whole program, the emergency vehicle management certification. That's on the EVT side, but focusing more on the management side of the house versus the technician side of the house. Try to get them out of their comfort zone and get them into a leadership role. And Jim talked about a little bit about the junior staff. This is perfect for the junior staff as well. They want to get, they want to take that next step for your succession planning and whatnot. So I did throw the CAFM program in there as an option at the city's expense as well. I truly believe in that whole entire program, and I think it's been beneficial for not just the individual, but also for the organization that that individual belongs to. So. Along with that, reached out to different different vendors, seeing what kind of training that they had, to offer the leadership. So that's just kind of how I bridge that gap. So.
Yeah, outstanding. In-house training programs, training. How do you find them? How do you keep them? It's so important these days. You got to have those programs going. So let's move along here. Sustainability. That's number 3. Sustainability is really big on everybody's radar, even in the commercial fleets, even in the construction fleets. I see it all across the industry. Boards, communities, they're demanding sustainability out of their fleets. Alternative fuels, alternative fuel goals, solar systems. We've got fleets hedging CNG like they used to hedge diesel. I started seeing that and I was like, wow, what a great idea. Hydrogen development. We have some of the 100 best fleets working on hydrogen development right now, in-house. One of the areas that's really advanced in sustainability is the City of Orlando. Jonathan has a net zero program going down there. They are moving forward, and he's going to tell us about that.
Yeah, so Mr. Ron, he was talking a little bit about the challenges between fleet and facilities, and then also having several different, satellite shops. City of Orlando, I struggled with this one. I tried to find a problem. I even went to the facilities manager, and I asked him, I said, hey, what kind of problems do we have? And he says, Jonathan, I really don't know. So in my opinion, I think that's a good place to be. That's a very good place to be. And anybody knows that David Dunn, I used to work for him before, but just about a year ago, they decided to split fleet and facilities up. They gave him facilities and they gave me fleet. So it's nothing for me to go to literally 20 feet over to my former boss and ask him and says, hey, how can you help me with these charging stations? How can you help me with the facility? So I mean, like, we're very close knit and we just try to maintain that whole partnership right there. But I'll tell you, like, some of the challenges, like, I think everybody's having these same challenges, is the construction and the demand for construction, the supply, demand, whatnot. So this is a photo of our building, our current building right now. Like, so we have a series of like 480 kilowatts of like solar panels on top of the building. So we were looking to expand that by another 250K. But unfortunately, like, the cost came in significantly higher than we anticipated to. So we're just going to have to, delay that until, like, another year or two. But I'll tell you the benefits to being with facilities, and we share a compound together. But like life cycle management of the EV chargers, us as fleet managers, fleet division managers, I think that we manage a lot. So my approach was to put this back onto the facilities department, let them manage the life cycle of the EV chargers and whatnot. So through strategic partnering, I think that's a huge plus as well. So just some more suggestions. We actually have at the City of Orlando, we actually have a team that's it's called Greenworks Orlando. You might have heard of it, but that's what their sole job is to do, is to go around and figure out how can we be more sustainable throughout the entire city, working with the community, working with like local partners, local vendors. So that would be my suggestion, like, to take away from this. But like I said, just focus on your facilities, like partner up with those folks and put them on your back hip. Like, you never know when you're going to need them. So. Yeah, outstanding. Yeah, it takes a lot to do that. Dakota County, Minnesota just put in 84,000 square feet of PV panels on their roofs. Huge, huge investment. So, when we talk about that and we get into solar and those types of things, Jim works in an area where it's low-lying. He's in the port. He's right down there at sea level. Everybody remembers Superstorm Sandy, where it wiped out New York City in that area. But they've got to do EV charging too, and they've got to have their systems, and they've got a way to figure it out where it's mobile. He's going to tell us about that.
Absolutely, thank you. So it was pretty interesting what John just had to say. He talked about separating the chargers from the electric vehicles. We're structured kind of the same way. We have our office sustainability, who heads the information and guidance to our line departments who ultimately install the chargers. But we have a huge input and a collaboration due to the vehicle purchasing and trying to get the chargers in on the same time, which, if anyone told you that everything works out perfectly like that, I don't think they're telling the truth. So with that being said, we do have some mobile charging solutions. We have 2 different companies that we're utilizing right now. One of them, you can actually walk right down and check out one of the units from the picture. But we do use mobile charging for multiple different solutions. So one of the things that we have throughout our region of New York and New Jersey is we have Port Authority owned property and we have some leased property. Now, whenever you're dealing with putting in chargers into leased property, you're going to run into some issues. You're trying to talk, as the tenant, you're trying to talk somebody into putting chargers in for you, and depending on your lease term, not everybody's really excited about investing that capital infrastructure to put that in. So when we have a situation like that, that's where these mobile charging solutions actually will come in and help support our efforts. So if we only have a building for a year or 2, we can put these in place, pick them right up, and move them to the next location. Off-site construction. It's absolutely known that the Port Authority is doing some major construction efforts. We're redoing Kennedy Airport Terminal, we're redoing LaGuardia completely, and we're also building Terminal 1 over at Newark Airport. Now, when you have these large capital projects, if you want to invest in chargers and putting all this into the ground, you don't want it ripped right back up and all that time, investment, and money that you're putting into it. So we see that being done as another site. So, for example, the Bayonne Bridge, when we raised the deck, we had a bunch of engineers on the site. We were able to bring one of these units on site and charge the vehicles right there so that they didn't have to go all the way back. So it showed a lot of efficiency on that end. You're going to see a lot too that the cost of putting in chargers is quite expensive. And when that happens, we do a cost-benefit analysis. We'll be able to look at what it's going to cost to put into the ground depending on the run. And that's where these solutions will come in as well. So we'll look at what is X versus Y, and then we'll figure out what we're going to implement in that situation. Facility support, so what does that mean? So like I was saying, when you go through the charger process and you're putting in a level 2 charger, DC fast, whatever the case is, the vehicles don't always come in at the same time, right? You don't want to order a vehicle and there's no way to charge it. So this helps with those efforts. We're able to help support those facilities until we get the infrastructure in the ground. If there's any sort of delays, never happens to us, by the way. But we're able to help and keep the operation moving, and that's our main function. And one of the other and last tools we use it for is our motor pool. So we have a large motor pool that's located in Jersey City. So instead of having every department have multiple vehicles, we're able to reduce the amount of those vehicles and have them rented out, sort of like you would do with an enterprise or something. You show up and you get it. So to support those efforts, what we do is we have another type of charger that we can move around 2 locations. So we have a staff member walk around and physically charge it. The great part about that is we can charge off-peak hours, catch that energy, and then we're able to charge those vehicles. So that's been another benefit of having these mobile chargers as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff. Mobility. You know, he can lease property and just pick it up and move it out of the way, or he doesn't have to tear up the infrastructure. That's great about that. You know, another aspect of sustainability is the actual charging. There's a lot of investment into that. And Ron out in Sacramento County does charging as a service, and he's going to tell us about that.
Well, this is a brand new initiative, and we're lucky to have Sacramento Municipal Utility District as our electric provider. So through our collaborations, again, with our local Clean Cities, the Clean Air District, and our SMUD, we've done other projects and taken advantage of incentives they've provided in the past to put chargers right at our fleet offices and around our branch center facility area. They actually approached us, and this is where your data comes in. Get telematics on your cars as soon as you can, because even if you don't think it will benefit you now, which it will, but in the future you're going to need that data to get this stuff done and to get these big capital projects funded. Most of us can't do it on our own. And so SMUD, being the electric utility, they have a direct interest in selling electricity and promoting that. And so they had a whole team put together, and they asked us for our data. Because of our telematics, we were able to provide it. We were able to budget for 100 more EVs next year while we're planning the charging. SMUD will assist, and they've surveyed our area for all of our electrical capacity, where we're going to need future electrical capacity. And the result is going to be 24 new chargers down at Department of Human Resources, 2 of which will be DC fast chargers. And then beyond that, we're looking at areas outside the county to disperse that charging and put it all over the county. A huge part of this is reaching out to your departments that are going to get those new cars and start allowing them to get their mind around it and start having those conversations early. You're going to hit some resistance, but with that data, again, you're going to be able to show them what their trip data is, and an electric vehicle in most cases will work. So you've got to get that out of the way. The trip data is just really going to help you. Don't wait. The other thing is, if your fleet is on a 10-year replacement cycle, that means you should be replacing 10% of your fleet every year. And if you have a goal, for instance, we have our updated climate action plan to be all electric by 2035. That's very aggressive. Well, that's not much more than 10 years away. And so if you're going to be there, you know, you got to look out to your goal and start planning that ahead of time, start forecasting those replacements ahead of time, or you're not going to be there. And we're going to be talking about forecasting here more in a minute.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, outstanding. You know, and Ron brings up a good point, life cycles. He brings that up. You know, you've got that 10-year life cycle. You're replacing 10% of your fleet. So if you're thinking about moving in this area, you know, 10 years from now, and you have those goals, which are big in sustainability, you need to be on that right now. But one thing we haven't touched on yet when we talk about life cycles is, think back 10 years or so ago. There was a massive movement to move towards CNG. I know there's several fleets sitting in the room that made massive efforts, put in huge infrastructure for CNG, converted their fleets over here. Tracy has got some ways to cut your costs on that in a public-private system. She's going to tell us about that.
So funny, because our CNG station was 10 years in the making. We recently, along with Trillium and Groot Industries, our waste service provider, were awarded the Chicago Area Clean Cities Public-Private Partnership Award for our CNG facility. The city of Naperville owns the land that the station is built on, and we lease that to Trillium. Trillium, through a DERA grant, found the funds to build the station. They own it, they operate it. They're responsible for all the maintenance of our beautiful station, which our director would appreciate that Jim made that comment. And the Groot was key to this whole initiative because they were able to step forward and commit to the volume of fuel that Trillium required to make the station viable in that location. We benefit from the lease, so the funds from the lease, and then also we get a piece of every sale at that station. And that revenue is what will fund our CNG conversions and our other alternative fuel initiatives moving forward.
Outstanding. Yeah, we can't forget about that life cycle. You know, you bought it 10 years ago, you got a 10-year plan, you've got a 30-year infrastructure, you've got to be able to use it, but you have to meld everything together as we move forward. So these plans, there's no 0 to 100. It takes a long time, a lot of planning to do that. So let's move on to our next initiative, which is life cycles. Life cycles are becoming much more important to the 100 best fleets. I would assume most likely because of the supply chain issues and the issues we're having there. People are doing their analysis. They're spending more time on it. They're extending life cycles. They're thinking about their EV transition plans, all these things, utilization, disposition services. Repurposing is becoming a large issue now. A lot of fleets are doing that. But when it comes to life cycle, you've got to have a replacement plan. And you've got to have a long-range replacement plan. And I know it takes years to put those things together. And Tracy in Naperville spent years doing hers. She has a fully funded 5-year replacement plan. She's going to tell us how she did it.
So our replacement plan, one of our goals in putting this together was to improve communication and to increase transparency to our stakeholders. So our vehicle replacement plan, as with all of you, is critical to our mission to provide safe, reliable, and economical and cost-effective equipment for each of our operating departments. Years ago, those were funded through a vehicle replacement fund. That shifted in 2007. Wonder why? Has nothing to do with the economy at the time. And so now that is funded within each operating department's budget, which was probably looked at as a bad thing at the time, but actually it's been beneficial because our operating departments now have a stake in the game. They actually are more critical about which vehicles are being replaced rather than asking for everything. So with that in mind, we needed to be able to provide more data to support which vehicles were eligible for replacement. So we looked to industry peers here in NAFA, APWA, Municipal Fleet Managers Association, and we put together our internal replacement criteria. It's a scoring system. Part of that scoring system, a small piece of that scoring system, is the utilization of the vehicle, and another piece is the condition of the vehicle. I hope one key takeaway you all have had today is that none of us can do any of this alone. And so with our condition, for example, our technicians are involved in that piece of the process. So our technicians pull the vehicles in annually and evaluate their condition. They look at the interior, exterior, mechanical condition of the vehicle, evaluate overall roadworthiness, and anticipate any future repairs that might be coming our way, and use that to give a condition score. That is the only subjective piece of data surrounding our vehicle replacement. So of course, what do our user departments focus on? That condition score. We now needed to come up with a way to clearly show, clearly justify the condition rating that the technicians give the vehicles. So we put together a fleet flashcard system, and this is updated annually by our technicians when they do that condition rating. And they document in photographs what the condition of the vehicle is. So years ago, our replacement meetings with departments might be a little contentious. And now with that clear picture of which units are more critically in need of replacement, that contention has subsided. In addition, as we move through our budget process, we have very clear data and a very clear picture about which units need to be replaced. We have full support of our management team for our vehicle replacement planning because of the data that we provide throughout the process.
Outstanding.
As I've been there, we have seen our request for vehicle replacement concessions decline to nothing. So as we go through our budget process, we're not asked to make any concessions on the vehicle replacement side. In 2020, when many of my peers were asked to defer or completely stop replacing vehicles, we were not. I had a meeting with our finance director, budget manager, Department of Public Works director, and both of our city managers, and discussed our vehicle replacement plan. Because of our 10-year replacement cycle, they could see the future impact if we were to defer any of those replacements in 2020. So we replaced everything we planned to in 2020.
Good. Outstanding. Yeah, you got to have those replacement funds. And you know, it's really important to do that. And you got to have that long-term plan. Ron's got a similar plan down there, and he's restructured his motor pool with that. He's going to briefly take a minute to tell us about that.
Yeah, so we, that's
the flashcard, I'm sorry.
So every year our budgeting and replacement process, it's a different process for light than heavy. You have the light fleet manager and the heavy fleet manager, each in control of their fleets and deciding ultimately what gets replaced. But in order to look into the future, you know, I've seen a lot of replacement modeling tools that, I don't know, to me, each one of them kind of lacks something. So I had this crazy plan, and I got together with our IT administrator, Gabe Vasquez, and what I couldn't do to put it into action, he could do. I just gave him the crazy ideas. So I came up with this crazy spreadsheet fed by data from our FMIS system. Again, that's where the data, odometer readings, everything's so important. And built out, you know, the in-service date, the current mileage, the mileage per year, and built that this whole sheet. So this is just the dashboard for that sheet. You see our total unit count. You see each year the replacement projections. In light blue, you see what's budgeted. And in dark blue on those budgeted lines, you see what didn't get on the replacement list. So those stay there. And they keep feeding the data to build this sheet. So it'll give you your average age of your fleet. You see an 8% inflation there. That is the rate that a lot of our accounting department uses to set rental rates, and they base a lot of their calculations on that. Well, currently, that's probably a realistic rate, and it's probably a little low. For years past, it was probably pretty high. So this tool in the background, you can change that inflation rate per vehicle class. Or if historically it's been a low inflation rate and you just bought a new unit in that class, you can adjust that inflation rate. So you can have a version for your high-level budgeting and planning, but you can also have a version that's for fleet to know very accurately what your spend is going to be and what you need to spend to replace those units when that time comes. All that data gets given to the light fleet manager, the heavy fleet manager, and they use that as a guide. It's not the Bible, it's basically a tool for them. And then I've got to, based on what they decide to replace, keep that data going, so we're constantly. The idea here is, to even out that graph so that you're not riding a roller coaster and spending a bunch of money one year and not enough the next year. And in the data behind this, identify those heavy years, pick out those units that you can maybe replace early in a light year, or if you don't have the money in those years, this is a guide so you can start digging in and drilling down and find out, okay, once I do have budget, what are the high priority units? This has a component in it of the delta between usage, fuel usage, so there's some tools behind the scenes where you can identify if the unit utilization has dropped off, if it's increased. Maybe you can have those discussions with those departments. Hey, we noticed your utilization dropped last year. What's going on? Oh, well, we lost 3 employees. Okay, do you need that car? Because it's on a replacement list. So along with telematics, these tools, you can really nail down, in tight budget years. And, the important thing is to plan ahead, get ahead of it, because when the pandemic hit, we had just pretty much gotten caught up on our replacements. We didn't know what was coming. And the point is, there's never a bad time to do this. And when the bad times come, you're going to be glad you did, because the units you have to defer at least aren't going to be way out there. That's not going to kill you if you're on time with your replacements. And you're going to be able to show what your spend's going to be and project clear out into the future for your whole fleet.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's really important to have that going on. And I know we are starting to get short on time. We have to go through technology yet. I do know Jonathan has a real quick statement he wants to make about his plan in Orlando before we get to technology. You want to take just 30 seconds and tell us about it?
Yeah, so just real quick, like everybody's already touched on the replacement plan. Excuse me, so I started my replacement plan 2 to 3 years ago, anticipating the goal that we have at 2030 to be alternatively fueled, 100% alternatively fueled. So I kind of started that ahead of the game, because you don't want to wait until 10 years before, especially when you have life cycles that are at 6 to 8 years. You're already behind the power curve on that. So the biggest challenge here was to eliminate range anxiety. So with the internal business departments. So the way that we mitigated that was through deploying 100 EV chargers throughout the community center, with all the community centers throughout the city of Orlando. So, and that's been very helpful for us, and helping these internal business units to adopt the EV lifestyle.
Awesome, good stuff. All good stuff. Okay, let's move on here. The last initiative, number 5, is technology. And one of the largest things in technology is the implementation and the integration of these systems. It's so important to have integrated data at your fingertips. And I know we're running short on time, so we got to be quick. But Jim's going to tell us how he did that, and he did a TCO study, and the integration of his data was key to that. Take just a minute to tell us about that.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we did was we had to look at the information that was coming in to give us the proper information coming out to make these decisions on our life cycles. First thing we did is we grabbed our asset management and we completely revamped it. So we had AssetWorks M4, we went to M5. Then what we did is we introduced CAM, Capital Asset Management. So it's hard enough trying to get all the replacement cycles, but then you add the EVs, which we were talking about, and we have some aggressive goals on electrification. You have to start factoring those in as well. And that's where you start getting the borrowing and replacing of vehicles. You're able to repurpose the vehicles. But one of the things that we really did was, this was mentioned before, was integrating telematics as well. So instead of having information put in by people, we're now integrating all that software that's coming directly from the vehicle, and we're doing a data dump right into our asset management. Another thing that we're able to do because of this is we're able to project what the life cycles are going to be for electric vehicles. And we're doing that through past data and some factors that if anyone wants to talk afterwards, I'd be more than happy to share our formula for that.
Yeah, the data integration is so key to that. And you know, we're going to get moving on here. I know we are going to run over just a hair, but we want to get there. And Tracy's got an idea in her operation. She's using technology to streamline her upfitting process. And Tracy, if you could just take just a second to tell us about that, it'd be great.
Yeah, so when I first started at Naperville, our police vehicle came in, called the police department, sent an email to them and our lead technician letting them know the vehicle was in. Lead technician calls me immediately. What are you doing? He's like, they're going to expect that thing tomorrow. I said, that's an unrealistic expectation, and we need to communicate better with them about what is a realistic expectation. So our Gantt chart is visible citywide. It allows everybody to see what our workload is. It allows us to adjust it on the fly as a vehicle upfit is completed by a technician. They know what they're working on next. So this has been key in keeping us moving forward through our upfitting, but then also communicating citywide so everyone knows what our workload looks like.
Yeah. Outstanding. She's using technology to bring visibility to the organization. And you know, when we talk about data integration and all that, and Jim touched on it, and I know we're getting close here, but Ron wants to tell us just a little bit. He's got 700 telematic units all integrated into his fleet information management system. And how does that work for you, real briefly, Ron?
So it's been a lot of work. We've got different bargaining units. We've had to have multiple meet and confers to get to those 700 units. It's a tough road, and we've got a lot more units to do. Next step is heavy duty, but as you're trying to collaborate with your utilities, get these incentives and grants, everything that you do is going to be based on data, and the more reliable, the more accurate and timely it is, the better for you. And I can't emphasize enough Tracy's the tracking of your procurement. You've got to track that just accurately. It's having your on-time replacements is so important, and tracking where that's at in the process is very important. And she's right, you can't get this equipment fast enough for the customer, right. So you've got to be able to communicate to them and quickly. And I have those procurement sheets on my desk because when someone calls me, I want to be able to get them an answer quick so they know I'm not just giving them a line, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The visibility of that. Listen, we're out of time. We've gone through the initiatives. I want to thank the panel. Outstanding stuff. I want to thank the audience for that. We hope you've got information that's been well deserved, and we hope you can take some of that back and implement it in your organizations. I would like to thank everyone here and have a nice day.
Muito bem, pessoal. Vamos encerrar agora, mas amanhã tem muito mais. E é claro, o nosso bate-papo ao vivo com os nossos parceiros convidados. Até amanhã!